All right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Christine, and I'm joined today as well by my colleagues Parth and Craig. Before I get started, we are talking about licensing commercial software in AWS. How many of you that have dealt with commercial software have seen costs typically increase over time? Feel free to raise your hands. Great. So that is what we see from a lot of customers. Typically, costs go up over the years through time. But actually today what we're going to talk to you about in our session is not only your licensing options in AWS, but also how you can actually lower your costs over time instead. All right, so let's start with a customer example. We worked with a customer that is in a leading online real estate marketplace. And when the federal government implemented a foreclosure moratorium, revenues plummeted by 80%. As a result, the CTO reached out to us and asked how we can reduce their costs as soon as possible. So the first step we took with the customer is to look at their licensing options. A lot of customers don't know that they can bring licenses that can save on the compute costs, but there's also cost examples for license included and ways to optimize those as well. So understanding which licenses are eligible to bring, which workloads would make the most sense for license included or BYOL, can really help lower costs to start. And that's what I will be speaking to you about today. Next, we have optimization, and that is what Parth is going to be speaking to you about today. This can help lower costs on the licensing, but also the compute costs as well. And then we have modernization, and that's what Craig will be speaking to you about today. All right, so for the agenda today, we have the commercial software options first, presented by myself. Then we'll have the AWS optimization and licensing assessment program that Parth will speak to you about. And then we have modernization options. So for commercial software options in AWS, why is this important to start? Having a well-informed licensing strategy, knowing what licenses you can bring, can really impact your total cost of ownership. And as you'll see throughout the presentation today, there can be a lot of different pathways that are available to you. Some might not be available. It all depends on your workloads and the licensing that you have. And so it is an important topic to make sure you understand prior to planning a migration, what workloads you're running and what licenses you have or need to have for those. So for the licensing options in AWS, we've got a high-level overview here. First, we do have license included instances from AWS where the licensing is included in the compute costs. And then there's a number of options for bringing your own licenses. We have shared tenancy options for eligible products. On the Microsoft side, that would be products eligible for license mobility benefits. And then we have dedicated options for licensing by physical core. Under the dedicated options, there's options for third-party hypervisors such as Nutanix. We have Windows Server BYOL requires dedicated hosts, and there are some licensing benefits for Oracle database as well. So we'll start with license included. License included can be really flexible and adaptable. So if you've got workloads that need to scale up and down, shorter term workloads, workloads that are maybe short term, or workloads that maybe need to come and go, can be turned off, scheduled, that sort of thing. License included is the best option there. And that's because when you stop a license included instance, you stop paying for the licensing as well. And there even can be some modernization strategies there with license included. If you've got a licensing agreement term you have to deal with, instead of maybe renewing for 3 years, you could look at license included instead and move away from it whenever you no longer need it. There's no terms necessarily required there. So on the Microsoft server side for license included, we offer Windows Server. It is just one edition. There's no edition listed. It covers any edition install. You can use that with our provided Amazon Machine Images or AMIs, or you can create your own as well and use license included for those too. These do include any number of Windows Server CALs or connections for internal or external use. And each Windows Server EC2 instance will include 2 remote desktop connections for administrative purposes. Then we have SQL Server. This is available in Enterprise, Standard, and Web editions. It is important to note that Web edition is only for publicly accessible websites. It's not to be used for any line of business applications such as ERP. And these options are also in the core format, if you're familiar with that. For SQL Server, this includes unlimited internal or external connections. And for SQL Server 2017 and newer, it is available on Linux, which can help save on the Windows Server license included costs. Now for Oracle, we offer license included Oracle database in the Standard 2 or SE2 edition. And that's available on Amazon Relational Database Services or Amazon RDS, which is our managed offering. And this is billed per hour. Now for the desktop side, we do have a number of Microsoft desktop applications now available. On EC2, we have Office Professional Plus, Visual Studio Enterprise, and Visual Studio Professional. These, it is important to note, on EC2 do require the use of AWS Managed Microsoft AD. And all of these options are billed per user per calendar month. You'll see on Amazon Workspaces, we offer quite a few more options as well, Project, Visio, as well as Office Standard Edition too. So this can be a great option for customers that maybe only need a select number of licenses or don't have their own licensing to bring. It's going to be important for any service providers or ISVs that use SPLA or service provider licensing agreements today, as those SPLA BYOL will be ending September 30th, 2025, and license included will be the approach to move forward there. Now, I am happy to announce that just under 2 months ago, we did release the Windows Server Remote Desktop Services SALs or CALs or connections, whatever you want to call them, as a standalone license included product. So this is available on EC2, billed per user per month as well. And you can get it from the AWS Marketplace and activate users through AWS License Manager. It's important to note this does not require the use of AWS Managed AD. It can be used for self-managed AD. It doesn't have any version restrictions or anything like that. This again will be important for any SPLA customers that will no longer be able to bring their SPLA licenses next year. This will be a great option to have available, and it is available now. All right, so let's talk about bringing your own license. This is where it can get a little bit more complicated depending on tenancies, licenses that you own, and so we'll walk you through that today. So license mobility through software assurance, anyone might be familiar with that if you're using Microsoft products. This is the requirement for deploying Microsoft products or bringing your own licenses to shared tenancy or default EC2. So in order to have license mobility benefits, the license must have active software assurance or eligible subscription licenses. The product itself must also be eligible for license mobility benefits. So a good example there is Windows Server with software assurance does not have license mobility benefits. Windows Server is not granted license mobility benefits in the Microsoft product terms, and that's why dedicated hosts are required for Windows Server. But SQL Server, which is the most commonly brought product on the Microsoft side that we see, is eligible for license mobility benefits, and it can be brought to shared tenant EC2 as long as you've got active software assurance or eligible subscription licenses. There is a license mobility verification form that Microsoft asks you fill out. It needs to be submitted up to 10 days after bringing the licenses, so it's not something you have to wait on. It's not something you have to wait for confirmation before you deploy, just an activity to send that form in. It is also important to note that any licenses for the server products, such as Windows Server or SQL Server, purchased through the Cloud Solution Provider Program or CSP or New Commerce Experience, NCE, or under the Microsoft Customer Agreement or MCA, are not eligible to bring. So even for SQL Server subscription, under that program, it is restricted. And all of this is possible because AWS is an authorized mobility partner with Microsoft. So to bring licenses or Microsoft licenses to Amazon EC2 or shared tenancy, typically customers will start with a Windows Server license included AMI or Amazon Machine Image, and that's because the only compliant option to deploy Windows Server on shared tenancy is with license included. On top of that, you'll deploy your application with license mobility benefits. And that's how that typically works. Whenever customers bring their own licenses, they must bring their own media as well on the Microsoft side. With SQL Server 2017 and newer, it is available on Linux, so you can also use BYOL for that, and that's a great option to save on the Windows Server license included costs as well. And there are a number of products eligible for license mobility benefits. It's not just SQL Server. You see a list here. There's others as well. It's all found in the product terms, but I'm happy to also help you with that. If you want to reach out to me, we have our contact information at the end of the presentation. All right, so bringing core licensing to shared tenancy. For SQL Server Core, you're going to license per vCPU, and there is a minimum of 4 vCPUs or cores to be licensed for each EC2 instance. And the way that looks, an example here, we have the R6i 4X large. It has 16 vCPUs. You'd license with 16 cores of SQL. It's important to note also that there's passive failover benefits when you bring SQL Server with software assurance or eligible subscriptions. And the way that works in AWS is different than on premises. So it would be one active licensed SQL Server gets you one passive or non-licensed SQL Server. SQL Developer Edition is also a great option for any non-production workloads. That is free for customers to bring. It can be brought to shared tenant EC2, and that is our top recommendation for any non-production SQL. Always use Developer Edition. Now on the Oracle side, we've got 2 vCPUs required. For every 2 vCPUs, one Oracle processor license is required if you've got hyperthreading enabled. And if you don't have hyperthreading enabled, it's one Oracle processor license per vCPU. And this example here is the hyperthreading option. So if you've got 96 vCPUs, you're going to need 48 processor licenses. Now we do have a feature called Optimize CPU, which can be a great way to lower the number of licenses you need to bring. There was an update released for this about a month or so ago that does allow you to use this on previously launched instances or existing instances. So cores can be reduced or disabled on existing or at instance launch, and this will allow you to bring fewer SQL core licenses, but just remember there is that 4 core minimum still for licensing requirements. Now, some of you may or may not be familiar with some changes that happened to Microsoft's product terms October 1st, 2019, and this was a big impact for listed provider clouds, which are named as AWS, Alibaba, and Google. Per these changes, products that do not have license mobility benefits, such as Windows Server, to be eligible for BYOL must meet all of the following requirements. The licenses must be perpetual, not subscription. The license must be originally purchased before October 1st, 2019, or within an enterprise agreement term that started before October 1st, 2019. The version must be publicly available before October 1st, 2019, and it does require dedicated infrastructure. So for Windows Server, that would look like perpetual Windows Server licenses purchased before October 1st, 2019, and the version you can deploy is 2019 or earlier for Windows Server BYOL. And that does require dedicated hosts. Any server products that do not have license mobility benefits do require dedicated hosts. And here is a list of the main products affected by these changes. So Windows Server I just spoke to. It's licensed very similarly to on-premises. You would license all of the physical cores, and software assurance is not required for Windows Server BYOL, again, because it does not have license mobility benefits. So that's a key thing to remember there. Windows Desktop OS was also impacted by these changes, but in a different way. Going forward, currently today, the only option for customers who want to bring Windows 10 or 11, for example, do require dedicated infrastructure, but that can be dedicated instances or BYOL workspaces. It doesn't have to be dedicated hosts. And the only option is through VDA licenses or virtual desktop access licenses purchased from Microsoft, and those need to be brought over per user. VDA add-ons are about half the price of the full VDA, and that is available for customers that already have existing Microsoft 365 licenses. Microsoft 365 apps were also impacted by these changes, and currently today, as of August 2023 actually, there is now an option to bring those to Amazon Workspaces only, and it is the specific licenses we've got listed up there for you. So the Microsoft 365 bundles specifically, including E3, E5, the A plans for academic customers, the government plans, Business Premium, and Copilot as well. And then Visual Studio was definitely impacted by these changes. This is a tough one. So if you've got the older perpetual Visual Studio licenses, that again were purchased before October 1st, 2019, you can bring those, but you would be restricted to using versions that were released before October 1st, 2019. And what we see with a lot of customers is that they're using subscription licenses today, and those, once renewed on or after October 1st, 2019, are not eligible to bring. And that's one of the reasons why SQL Developer Edition is so key for any of your non-production SQL workloads. So a bit more about dedicated hosts, as it is a requirement for Windows Server BYOL. I've got an example up here of the R6i dedicated host. It has 64 physical cores, so if you've got eligible Windows Server Data Center licenses, you would bring 64 cores, and you'd be licensed for any number of EC2 instances you can then deploy on that host. It's important to note that our EC2 dedicated hosts are not the same as bare metal. It's still the same EC2 instances and hypervisor you'd be deploying. It's just that you're managing the placement of those instances and purchasing per host rather than per instance. And there have been a lot of features added over the years to dedicated hosts to make them very cloud-like, integrations with AWS License Manager, automated host recovery, multiple things. We've got lots of information online, or feel free to reach out to me if you want more information on that. All right, a bit more about dedicated hosts and the licensing benefits there. Obviously, there's some requirements like bringing Windows Server, Data Center, and I spoke to that already. But also SQL Server Enterprise has some benefits. You can license by physical core and essentially have twice the many of vCPUs for the same number of core licenses. So an example would be a 48 physical core host, maybe the R5. You would bring 48 cores of SQL Enterprise and could deploy up to 92 vCPUs, because you are allowed to deploy up to 48 SQL Server instances in that case. We also have Oracle Enterprise Standard Edition benefits here. This will allow you to license with the core licensing model, and that can decrease the number of licenses you need to bring. And dedicated host tenancy is also available on bare metal. If you are looking to bring your own hypervisor or third-party hypervisors, that's a great option as well, especially if you're looking to oversubscribe. Now for end of support for Microsoft workloads. We've got some recent end of support dates just to keep in mind. Windows Server 2012 and 2012 R2 went end of support October 10th, 2023. And SQL Server 2014 went end of support July 9th, 2024. Customers can still bring versions that are out of support, even older versions than these. Not necessarily recommended, but it's definitely possible. There's no technical restrictions on deploying those versions in AWS. But we do have some recommendations for you if you are running those workloads. So first, we've got upgrading to a newer supported version. For many customers, if you're deploying on shared default or default EC2, for example, with SQL Server, and you've got software assurance, it means you've got rights to newer versions. So you have those rights already with your existing licenses to upgrade, and we definitely have resources to help you with that. For the Windows Server piece, Windows Server 2019 is the last version you can bring, but it does not go end of support until January of 2029, so there's still some runway there. Modernization, moving off of the licensing requirement, will get you away from the end of support kind of restrictions and some of those concerns with not receiving those updates and patches. And then third-party solutions such as virtual patching, there's options out there we can help you with as well to help secure those workloads. And extended security updates, or ESUs, can be purchased from Microsoft and brought over. That applies for BYOL if you're bringing your own licenses, as well as license included. If you are looking to bring ESU for Windows Server end of support versions or for Windows Server 2012 and you're using license included, you do need to purchase a minimum of 8 cores of ESU per EC2 instance. And on the Windows Server side, if you're bringing licenses, you do need to still have active software assurance. Even though you don't need it to bring the licenses to AWS, you would need to keep it if you are looking to purchase ESU for those workloads. All right, and so that's a lot of information, and you can see there's a lot of different intricacies and things to be concerned about, what options you have. It all comes down to the specific licensing you own and the workloads you're running, the versions, additions, tenancy. So if you're thinking maybe you need some help on this, we definitely have a lot of great resources, and Parth is going to talk to you about that today and our optimization and licensing assessment program.
Thank you, Christine. I appreciate it. For a show of hands, how many of y'all have heard about the AWS Optimization and Licensing Assessment Program before? Great. So for some of y'all, this will be a refresher, but at the same time, provide me an opportunity to show you what's new with the program. And for those of you who this is new to, the short and sweet of it is it's an opportunity for AWS to help you cost optimize and at the same time provide an optimal path for migration. And then ultimately, if you save your company enough money, you'll get a suite at reInvent every year. So how does AWS help with these questions in terms of the how, the why, and the effectiveness of the OLA program itself? So an OLA enables our customers, your partners, to not only look at on-prem workloads, but workloads in other cloud providers, co-locations, and the whole idea behind it is, can we provide you with a migration and licensing strategy that helps unlock and allow you the ability to take advantage of the cloud itself? So by understanding your hardware specs, your application specs, the type of licensing agreements that you have, we're able to provide an optimal strategy where ultimately you're not tied down to a specific legacy software vendor. What's the best part of an OLA to me? In terms of it's a no-cost AWS funded offering. And so not only will it provide you with modeling, with your deployment options, but it'll also provide you an opportunity to take advantage of your existing investments, or as Christine mentioned, with license included, it provides you an opportunity to pay as you go. So the OLA is comprised of 3 steps: collect, analyze, and plan. And words are fairly self-explanatory, but in collect, the idea is, hey, we want to make a data-driven decision. And so we want to understand utilization, the type of machines you have, and ultimately what your objectives are. Are you looking to move to managed services? Are you looking to do a lift and shift? And in the collect phase, the notion is, hey, we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. So we have in-house tools for data collection. We have third-party tools for data collection. And at the same time, if you say, hey, Parth, we already have an existing software asset management tool. Can you leverage that as a part of the collection process? We can do so as well. Analyze is where we take that data and help put together that picture for you, help put together that roadmap. And then plan is ultimately taking that information and putting it into action in terms of the actual migration itself. So what workloads are included in the OLA program? So when we first started, the OLA program honed in on Microsoft workloads. Why? Because we saw that as an opportunity to say, hey, what are the top 90% spend? What are our customers spending 90% of their spend on? So Microsoft was a common software vendor, Oracle, VMware. And so while we initially started with Microsoft, and that was very centric around Microsoft Windows Server and SQL Server, we saw the demand continue to grow. Hey, we're not just looking to move Microsoft workloads, but we're also looking to move our enterprise workloads as well. And so expanded to say, hey, how can we help you with your Oracle workloads? How can we help with you with your storage and optimize those storage workloads? How can we help with you with VMware? Cloud to AWS is this notion that, hey, not only do I have workloads, as I mentioned, on-prem, but I also have workloads in other cloud providers. I'm looking to see if I can help my CTO, CIO, my company make a decision around how can we move some of those workloads that might be on another cloud provider to AWS in existing environments. And so this is a trend that we recently launched this year in terms of, hey, when we first moved to AWS, we didn't necessarily think or put the lens of cost optimization. So can you help us not only from an optimization, but from a licensing strategy for existing workloads that are already in the cloud. So the idea of the OLA and the spirit behind the OLA is, hey, can you help me reduce my licensing costs and then ultimately help me take advantage of cloud native services? So all the licensing that Christine just mentioned, we want to do the heavy lifting for you, and the idea of the OLA program is to do that. So why, even though we refer to the optimization licensing assessment program, and licensing is still the crux of the program, why it's just not about licensing, right? Our customers, you're faced with challenges all the time in terms of whether it's, hey, we have a renewal coming up with our licensing agreement, or we have end of life coming up, or a hardware renewal, or we have end of support workloads, as Christine mentioned, in terms of we need to find a path of how to best move those workloads. So, hey, we're acquiring a new company and they have a different type of agreement. How do we consolidate those agreements as a part of this move to the cloud? So the notion, although the OLA hones in on licensing, the idea is we want to provide you with an optimal migration path for your enterprise workloads. And so whether it's cloud to cloud, end of life, hardware renewal, the idea is we're looking at this from the lens of a technical perspective, a CFO's perspective, a procurement perspective. That's usually who we're working with in terms of audiences with our customers. And so the OLA applies not just to licensing, but ultimately all those decision and key stakeholders as a part of this process. So what does the process look like? So the first part of the OLA process is just understanding what your objectives look like and where your environments are currently at. How many environments do you have? By us understanding what your objectives are, we can work backwards to ensure that we're able to help you achieve what you're looking to accomplish. And so the initial part of the process is just jumping on a call either through our partners or with an AWS resource to help understand, hey, what are you looking to accomplish and how can we work backwards from there, and then coming up with a plan based on that. So we'll initially have a kickoff call and you'll see a reference to a tool installation. So the tool installation is not necessarily required, but kind of goes back to the crux of what I mentioned in terms of, hey, we're able to fund a third-party tool if needed. Are we talking about Microsoft workloads? Are we talking about Oracle workloads? Are we talking about VMware workloads? Are we talking about legacy IBM workloads? Depending on the context of the environment, where the environment's at, we're able to game plan the appropriate tool and the appropriate process to help collect the necessary information to provide a data-driven decision. Now, in terms of the timeline of the actual data collection, data processing, so if we're not necessarily looking to reinvent the wheel, and you have a lot of the data metrics, and a lot of the data metrics are specifically, they're not personal identifiable information, it's specifically, hey, let's understand what the server looks like, what's on the server, and how hard it's working. And then based on what your long-term strategy is in terms of you're looking to move to a managed service or you're looking to move away from a legacy software vendor, based on that, we're able to provide automated recommendations based on the tool or based on the process that we've deployed. So if it's something as simple as, hey, we can provide you a lot of this information, you'll see a reference to a flat file, then we can provide you with a report and provide you with a report and recommendations within less than 3 days. If you come to me and say, hey, Parth, that's great, but a lot of the information that we have, whether it's in a CMDB or internal data repository, it's not clean, or hey, the quality could be improved, we can leverage an in-house or third-party tool with that data collection process. And then once we've had an opportunity to collect the data, review the data, we'll do a formal readout. And the idea here is not only to provide you with cost optimization and modernization opportunities, but we're also able to provide you with a proof of concept as well. And if you need support with our services on ProServe, or if you need to be partnered up with one of our SI partners, we can help you with that in this process. So what's the best way of looking at the effectiveness of this program? Christine had mentioned that we were working with a leading online real estate marketplace company. And during COVID, COVID-related foreclosure moratorium, they lost 80% of their revenues. And so the CTO came to us and says, hey, I need your help to reduce costs, and I need your help to reduce costs quickly. And so the AWS team proposed a plan where we leveraged the optimization licensing assessment program, if you're familiar with our AWS MAP program and EDP program, to come up with the game plan, and we were able to do that within 5 months. So they came to us in August, and by the time we were in January, we were able to not only come up with the plan, we were able to help them increase their footprint on AWS, at the same time reduce their costs. And so in the customer's own words, they were able to save about 1.6 million annually on hardware and software. They were reduce their operational capital and operational spend. And not only that, after the foreclosure moratorium was lifted, they were able to take advantage of cloud native services by reducing their licensing spend and using that spend on the ability to modernize, which my colleague Craig will kind of speak to in a little bit. Hey, as a part of the OLA, Parth, what are some of the examples that you're looking to do in terms of optimization? So here's a quick example for this case with this online real estate company, where we took their existing architecture and they were looking to do a lift and shift. So we compared and helped them save 22% just by the recommendations that we made. So what did we do? So we took those, they were looking to move a Dell PowerEdge SQL cluster to EC2 as is. And so we recommended EC2 R6 ID instances, which included NVMe disk for faster and cheaper TempDB. The third SQL cluster node was replaced with FSX file services for their failover instance. And then we mirrored the GP3 disks were replaced with GP3 for log files. S3 IA for backup, and NVMe for TempDB for faster, cheaper, and more available access. Now the L, in terms of the licensing optimization, it's all focused on, hey, how can we help you reduce your cores while meeting your performance metrics? And so for this particular customer, we were able to reduce over 64 enterprise cores just by looking at their existing architecture and see how are we able to reduce the cores. It doesn't necessarily impact the compute costs, but the idea is, hey, how can we still meet your performance demands but still reach your objectives in terms of your application workloads? And so the idea here is we had a 32-core, 3-node structure. We had suggested for the passive node FSX, and ultimately it led to over a $300,000 savings that we were able to provide for SQL. I know we honed in on SQL here, but even in this customer example, we were able to optimize their Oracle workloads as well. So once the foreclosure moratorium was lifted, again, they were able to take advantage of more cloud native services, and ultimately they actually moved away from Microsoft SQL Server and moved to Amazon Aurora. These are a few more stats that I wanted to highlight. That we had a third party do a study over 300 OLAs, and on average we saw a 45% reduction on SQL Server. We were able, on the storage aspect, take advantage of an 80% savings versus unoptimized storage. And I think the part that gets missed a lot more times than not is that 98% of our customers are able to move their workloads to the cloud without any additional spend. 66% fewer Oracle threads, and the stats go on and on. And so our objective is to help you not only optimize your licensing spend, but ultimately move away from those legacy software licensing costs that you've had, so you can take advantage of what the cloud is made for. And so for this particular customer, they were able to do that in the long run. And my colleague, Craig, is going to speak to that in a little bit more detail in terms of, hey, once you're able to optimize licensing, the door opens up in terms of modernization. So hey, Craig, Can you help me out with that?
Thanks, Parth. So far, you've heard a lot of information on how to make the most out of your cloud migrations. Christine told you how some ways that you can use your commercial licensing in the cloud to run your existing software products. Parth just told you about the OLA and how you can optimize your workloads, make the most of those licenses, and get additional savings through infrastructure optimization. But what if you want to move beyond just optimization and bring your applications to the next level? How can you take those next steps? What if I told you that migrating your workloads to the cloud is not the end, but really it's just the beginning of a journey to make the most out of your cloud investments? My name's Craig Bossy. I'm a solutions architect for Microsoft workloads here at AWS, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about leveling up your applications through modernization. So for that online real estate company that we've been talking about, they were able to gain millions of dollars in savings and TCO reduction because of the techniques we've been talking about today with the licensing and optimization. But for this customer, and like many others, probably some of you there, they have additional opportunities. They have hundreds and hundreds of commercial SQL Server databases and applications that require Microsoft Windows. What's a company to do in a case like this to move beyond the commercial licensing? Well, I'm going to talk to you about going to that next level through modernization. But one of the things we run into is that the word modernization can mean different things to different people at different times in different circumstances. So let's level set here. At AWS, when we talk about modernization, we talk about it as an ongoing journey of transformation of your apps and your data. It's about adopting cloud-based services to reduce overhead and to get greater overall value. It's also about enabling you to more easily add capabilities that your business needs. And finally, it's about technology. It's about allowing you to innovate faster and shed some of that technical debt of the past and look forward into the future. It's a kind of a generic definition, I know, but how does that flow into what we've been talking about today? People have been building entire ecosystems of enterprise-based applications using commercial software for years, and these applications are the backbone of their companies. Who here is in that situation with applications using Microsoft Windows, SQL Server, Oracle, any of those, and these are like applications you cannot do without? Cool. Well, this is going to apply to you. Let's add a little bit of an enterprise flair to our definition. First of all, enterprise modernization is a lot about shedding commercial licensing. And that's because, as we heard, licensing can be one of the most expensive parts of any workload. It's about changing your mindset, going from something like all of our applications use Windows and SQL Server because that's the way we do it, to really picking more workload-based technologies. And to go with the word modernization, it's about the ability to use modern architectural patterns and practices and using the technologies that enable them. So in the enterprise world, there's lots and lots of examples of modernization pathways. And so we'll just go through a few here now. In the application side, it might be something as simple as going from ASP.NET on IIS on Windows to moving to ASP.NET Core that runs on Linux. Or it could be transforming a traditional Windows service that requires Windows over to a scheduled task that can run on a Linux container on a serverless container like AWS Fargate. On the database side, it might mean something like moving from SQL Server on Windows to SQL Server on Linux to reduce operating system licensing. Or it might mean leaving the commercial database behind altogether like Oracle and moving to an open source compatible database in the cloud like Amazon Aurora. And it goes beyond that into the rest of your application stack. Let's say you're using MSMQ for messaging in your applications. Well, you can adopt a cloud-based queuing system like Amazon SQS. And you might go from a traditional Windows file server to more scalable cloud storage like Amazon S3. It's really just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many other options for you out there. What does this look like in AWS specifically? Well, the bulk of what these enterprise applications use is compute and data. And in the enterprise world, frequently on the compute side, it's Windows as the operating system and a commercial database like SQL Server or Oracle. We've already talked about rehosting or migration, which is really the beginning of this journey. Replatforming is about taking your applications and moving them to more modern or managed infrastructure without really any major code changes. In the application side, this containerization is a natural fit for this, and you can use one of our managed container services like Amazon EKS or Amazon ECS. And on the database side of things, it's about using a managed database platform such as RDS for SQL Server or RDS for Oracle. But some choose to go beyond replatforming to refactor, which is about transforming workloads rather than just going with a new and improved status quo. On the application side of refactoring, often you'll see people moving to cross-platform.NET that can run on Linux, so they can take advantage of that, and also AWS Graviton. And then even moving beyond that to serverless technologies like AWS Lambda or modern architectural patterns like microservices. And on the database side, that means choosing the database that is right for your workloads rather than having that choice made for you up front. AWS has a number of purpose-built databases that you can select for any of your workload's data needs. But of course, one of the main benefits of modernization is cost savings. And addressing modernization in your compute can really help with that. So in the graph that you see here, what we're doing is taking Windows Server license included as a baseline and comparing EC2 instances with equivalent EC2 instances using Linux and Linux on Graviton. You can see that simply by going from Windows to Linux, you can get almost 50% savings because of the reduction in licensing. And by going to Graviton, which we'll talk about momentarily, you can get even further savings. Similarly, you can see this on the database side with this SQL Server example. Starting with SQL Server Enterprise on Windows Server, you can see that by moving from SQL on Windows to SQL on Linux, there's a slight opportunity to see some savings because of operating system licensing. But focusing on the database engine itself is really going to get you much further along. By downgrading from SQL Enterprise to SQL Standard, you can see that you could gain almost 50% savings, and really just because of that reduction in licensing. And there's still that small additional bump from going on Linux. However, what this means also is that still a significant portion of your cost here is coming from that licensing. Well, by moving to an open source compatible database in the cloud, such as Amazon Aurora Postgres, you can save 70% or more, and then also even take advantage of Graviton for additional savings. By moving to a purpose-built NoSQL database like Amazon DynamoDB, your savings can be even further along, 90% or more, and then you can start to also use different patterns of data access for your applications. So cost savings is great, right? And is modernizing just to save money though? For some, yes it is. But for others, modernization is really just something that helps people unlock the power of their business in conjunction with the rest of their cloud journey. Who here wants to do more than just simply save money with their cloud workloads? Awesome. So by modernizing, you pave the way for many benefits. For instance, it enables you to have technology move your business forward rather than stand in the way of progress. It allows your teams to more quickly adapt to those changing business requirements. It also lets you focus your teams on activities that move your business forward rather than focusing on things like keeping the lights on or addressing technical debt of the past. By modernizing in the cloud, you also get to start taking advantage of the security and resiliency that comes with running cloud-based workloads. And by using energy efficient technologies, you can start to go towards your sustainability goals. So I've talked about Graviton a little bit. So what is that and why would you use it? So Graviton is our ARM-based, AWS's ARM-based processor family designed to help you run your Linux-compatible applications more efficiently and cost-effectively in the cloud. You can easily move your cross-platform .NET on Linux to Graviton, often with little to no code changes. You can get up to a 40% better price performance using Graviton over comparable x86. And what does that mean? Well, you can get additional performance for your applications without a proportional increase in cost. Graviton-based instances can cost up to 20% less than comparable x86 instances for the additional cost savings. And because Graviton can use up to 60% less energy, it can help you meet those sustainability needs or sustainability goals that your company has. And that's not all. Modernization also can help you with your operational needs. Some industry reports have said that by modernizing enterprise workloads, there can be up to 75% in agility gains for your teams, helping them to innovate faster and further add capabilities. By modernizing to managed services, your people can focus on things that move your business forward rather than managing databases and servers and so forth, and really add those capabilities and not spend their time on non-value added tasks. And for companies that deliver software to their customers, some studies have shown that by modernizing, that these companies can deliver features almost 3 times as fast. So, yay, there's really great benefits to modernizing. It's easy to say that, but there was kind of a lot I just went through there, so it seems like it could be complicated to kind of get all of that at once. So how do you even get started? Well, the pathway to modernization is threefold: assess, mobilize, and modernize. And at AWS, we're there to help you at each step of that progress. Let's talk about the first step of that journey, assessment. That's where you discover the opportunities to modernize in your own workloads. So AWS has a number of tools to help with this. The modernization calculator for Microsoft workloads allows you to make estimates of common modernized architectures and modify them based on your own needs and the capabilities that you want. It allows you to quickly understand the financial benefits of modernizing your applications. Migration Hub Strategy Recommendations is a tool, or a service, that will assess your application portfolio and deliver to you recommendations, pathways, and strategies for modernizing your applications in AWS. The next step is mobilize. Mobilize is where you build capabilities to run your modernized applications in the cloud. It's not as much about tools and technologies as it is about preparing for your journey. One aspect is organizational alignment. That's where you ask questions like, does my team have enough training? Do I have the right teams in place? And is management actually on board with modernizing? Architectural design is where you plan your modernized applications based on your needs and capabilities. You take 1 or 2 applications and use them to iron out all the details, such as infrastructure as code, CI/CD, and your landing zone. Then you perform a technical review where you take the data from your architectural design and you ensure that the plan is feasible, and then you address any gaps that might show up in that plan. Once you have all those details sorted out, then you can develop a concrete plan to actually perform this modernization in the cloud. And that is the third step, to actually modernize. Let me tell you a few of the tools and things we have to help you with that. So on the application side, App-to-Container helps you to re-platform your applications by helping you to more quickly get those existing applications into the cloud. It simplifies moving your .NET and Java applications to a managed container service like Amazon EKS or Amazon ECS. Amazon Q developer transformation capabilities for .NET is a tool that will transform your .NET framework applications that require Windows to cross-platform .NET so you can more quickly get them running on Linux. running on Linux rather than performing manual porting. And this uses GenAI to help that process. And Microservice Extractor for .NET is a tool that can help get you started on the process of modernizing your monolithic applications to a microservices-based architecture. And on the database side, there's similarly some tools to help get you going there. So AWS Schema Conversion Tool helps you to transform those existing commercial databases, such as SQL Server Oracle, to open source compatible databases in the cloud, such as Aurora Postgres or Aurora MySQL. Database Migration Services Schema Conversion is a tool that, or is a service that, in addition to transforming your commercial databases, it will also help you to migrate your data to accelerate that journey. And now it even includes GenAI capabilities to further reduce the complexity. And if you have applications that are using SQL Server and you're not really ready to make many changes to those, you might try Babelfish for Aurora Postgres. Babelfish helps to accelerate by allowing you to point your applications that use SQL Server to Babelfish and start using Aurora, often with very few changes to your data access code. And finally, we have some programs that can help really in the entire modernization journey for you. The Experience-Based Accelerator is a no-cost program that we have where AWS will work with you and your team to plan and execute a 3-day modernization party that prepares you for full-scale modernization. The Application Modernization Lab is a cost-neutral program in which AWS experts will engage in a multi-week engagement to modernize high business value applications and engage with also post-lab check-ins to make sure you still have what you need to continue modernizing. And the Microsoft Modernization Program is an AWS investment program that helps offset the cost of modernization through the use of qualified partners. So, the most important thing to remember about all this stuff about modernization is that regardless of the size of your company or the experience that you have, modernization is within your grasp. And at AWS, we are committed to helping you with that. So for the entire session, there's a few things that hopefully you take away from this. First of all, you're in control. You have options to figure out how to license your software in AWS so that you can make the most of your workloads. By using the OLA, you can save costs both on licensing and on infrastructure. And by modernizing, you can reduce costs even further, but more importantly, you can unlock new capabilities for your business. So here's some resources that you can use for some reading after the fact. If you are just going to do one thing when you get back from reInvent and you've got workloads and you've never optimized them, check that out and see if maybe an OLA is right for you. And if you want to learn more about modernizing, check out the modernization programs that we've got there. And if you have any questions or concerns about your licensing of Microsoft in AWS, you can just email us here at microsoft@amazon.com. So thanks very much for your time today. We really take your feedback very seriously, so please take a few moments to fill out the feedback survey in your mobile app. And we're going to be hanging around here afterwards. If you want to talk further about any of these other topics, we'd love to speak with you. So thanks very much and enjoy the rest of reInvent.